Hi everybody, this is Bruce with Habowskistudio, and today I'm going to be painting here in our dining room. Upstairs in the studio I'm working on a big painting, so I don't want to disturb that whole setup I got going on. And this will just be a short little, going to work on a 6x8. We had a fresh snowfall last night here in Maine, and I took a couple pictures on the tablet. I'm going to see how it works working from those right here adjacent to me on the right. And I'm using my little paint box slash tabletop easel that I've designed and built that I use outdoors when I plein air paint. I made a video of this. It works out really great, and I do sell them, so I'll put a little link in the description box. But I'm going to use a limited palette. Haven't decided what yet. Most likely I'll use Ultramarine Blue, Yellow Ochre, and either Burnt Sienna or Cad Red. So let me decide that, then I'll get back to you. Thanks for joining me. Okay, I've got everything kind of set up, ready to go. And this is how it looks in tabletop mode, my paint box that I make and sell. And there, I don't know if this will capture it, but there's the scene I'm going to paint from my tablet. Not the whole scene. I'm going to crop in on this area kind of right in here, I think. And let's get started.
Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new to checking out my videos, thank you for stopping in on this one. We're finally getting back to some regular videos after my 5-day oil painting challenge once. I did have a lot of fun doing those, but it's nice to get back to some regular stuff and content for you guys out there. This part here in time lapse shows my usual kind of blocking in the basic shapes of the houses and such, to then go in and lay color. And it's a little bit of a process to find reference points. You might have seen me in the beginning of the time lapse putting little dots here and there. It's one way to coordinate where the points of shapes are going to end and that sort of. Now, what you can use for a technique instead of what I'm doing here, if you're unsure of your skills in draftsmanship and proportion, is to draw a grid on your panel, and then if you're using, say, like a tablet or a monitor like I am for your reference photo, taking a Sharpie and drawing the same proportionate grid on a piece of acetate and taping that over your screen, and that'll facilitate you putting certain key elements obviously in the right spot. I do propose that you do practice freehand drawing things such complex shapes such as this to over time hone your ability to do so and not have to rely on that, especially if you're going to go out in the field and paint some structural elements. It'll just slow you down having a grid to use and that sort of thing. And this is the part where you're kind of really going to take your time. Of course, this section that you're looking at is in time lapse, but it's important to get all the proportions correct before you move on, because for me, of course, it is my desire to have a representational scene, so it's important to get proportions right. Now you can see me kind of taking the colors, going in to create the basic shapes of the trees. And I'll go over the palette I'm using later on in the video, but and you can see normally I might go back and pick up more paint. In the past you've seen me do that frequently as I'm painting, but for this block-in stage I actually like that scratchiness to the paint, trying to get that spread as much as possible off the brush with the least amount of paint, to suggest some base layers of the wispiness of the dried twigs and branches of the tree in winter here. So that can facilitate getting a look to the trees later on as I lay more opaque paint. And so you always have to use different techniques to achieve different results. You could go in there with very wet paint and get an effect. It all depends on what you want to do. And I think I was just using a kind of round brush there to do that. Now I'm doing a technique that I find myself doing more and more, is to get some thick paint on in an area for speed of application and for potential texturing of the surface to start to build it up with a palette knife, and then I manipulate it with the brush. It's really an interesting way to get in there and get the paint on quick, facilitate uh, speed elements that you might want to incorporate in your work for different situational needs. And then I manipulate it with the brush. Like you have to decide if you want the strokes of the palette knife left that were applied, or for me, I wanted to just now take that paint I've already applied, just smooth it out and get it in terms of brush work in context with the rest of the painting that's going to be coming along. I don't want big, bold strokes of paint in this small painting. It'll be too much of a focus for the viewer. So it's important to think about those things, unless your purpose is to have uh, the focus be on the way the painting's painted. But for me, it's not. So here I am going back and applying some more paint, and I manipulate, get in some suggestive elements between tree limbs and that sort of thing. And again, I'll finesse that uh, with the brush as I'm going in and pulling in, as you can see. So it's a push pull process, and it's really a interesting way for this effect of getting trees without any leaves on. And I'll pull, of course, some of the sky color is going to mix with some of that very faint reddish layer, but that'll be some ghosting of tree limbs and that sort of thing. And then as I apply thicker strokes later on, it'll all start to make sense and build a volume to the tree. So just some ideas to try out for yourself. And now we're going to be coming up on some commentary, real-time commentary here. So let's get to that. Then I'll join you again in a moment.
Okay, what I decided to use for a palette was Ultramarine Blue, Yellow Ochre, and I'm using Burnt Sienna. And this is the stage I'm at right now. Got some basic bones in, checked my perspective lines, looks good enough. Started blocking in some trees. And what I'm going to do now is get some darker limbs in, and as I do that, then I'll go back in with the sky color and cut around those. But right now I'm going to work on getting some light tones on the roof of the snow, and then I'll start building up some comparisons that I'll start working out.
So you can see, yes, there's a certain point you need to step back and look at the piece at critical stages to make sure there's nothing that is really distracting and not going to read for the idea you want to present to the viewer. So I've done that, and now I'm putting in some lights. I'll start getting some comparison of lights and darks. I don't go too crazy with the ultra realization of the finished effect I want. I get it pretty well going, probably about 70%, 80%. And as the painting progresses, see right now I have no other color notes really to start comparing for super accuracy in the tone in relation to everything else. So I'm getting in some lights, and then later on I'll be getting in some darks. So, and you can see once I mix up a color, like with the lights, I'll go ahead and use that where appropriate in other light areas of the painting to facilitate not having to dance around too much. Like if I say worked on the house on the left only at first and completed that completely, then I missed opportunity to say where, see how I'm painting the roof on the right now. I've already painted the one on the left, but if I concentrate just on the house on the left and the total realization of the colors, then it just seems like I'm going back into white again and having to use it again. So I tend to uh, use that color wherever I can in the rest of the painting, and then move on to the next color. Especially if you're mixing up a color that it's really useful for matching tones and that sort of thing. While you can mix it again, it's just work smart, not hard. And again, comes back to if you were going to apply this effect to outdoor painting, speed. It allows you some speed to facilitate capturing an effect out in nature. So now I'm going to start getting in some of those dark tones to start having some bits of chunks of value to really start suggesting the planes of the elements in the painting. And sometimes if you're not sure in the beginning when you're applying a color, you think it's going to be too bright, as long as it's not overly saturated, you know it's maybe way too brilliant or something, you can always kind of leave it and wait until you get other elements of color in to then give you something to judge against. Another way is to obviously start with colors you know that are accurate, that are easy for you to achieve in a given scene, and those can be your kind of your visual rocks to lean on in terms of comparing difficult colors in other parts of the painting. So it's something to be aware of too. Different ways of working, that's all. You can see I'm kind of now mapping out the snow and shadow. So it was really fun with this piece to do all these little effects, and even now I can start to see it come along. And I'm really, when I was painting this, getting excited about how it was going to turn out. I can really see this as probably at least a 24 by 30 on up, proportionate to the 6x8 format. If I did so, I'd probably add more of the little bit of the street at the bottom to give the house something to anchor to. A few changes like that. I chose this sort of cropping element in photo because I really like the snow on the roofs, and that element really appealed to me. And you can always temper this. I'm using ultramarine blue, white, and I'm just tempering it if I need to, if I feel it needs to be grayed down or whatever with the other two primary colors. That's the beauty of working with a limited palette. You really just don't have too much to think about in terms of where to put your brush for more color, and also it really teaches you about potential for color mixtures. And I can't express enough how important it is to practice with limited palettes yourself, and maybe on some scrap sheets of canvas or something, create you some little color charts, or just do the same image, a little simple image in different primary palette groupings to see the effects you get, to different results you get for the same subject. I've done that a couple times in the past, and it's interesting. Just get a different feel to your subject. You can either have it very somber and moody, or bright and vibrant, depending on how you key the painting, and because you can also pick your primaries to be all very keyed up and bright. But don't forget, you can always mix those together to get your dull varieties. Just a lot of options out there. Getting some lighter value of snow and shadow because the angles are different in relationship to the sun. So you'll see that get finessed more later on also. And I wanted in this video to have a little more real-time commentary also, but with my wife in the other room with the TV on and other distractions, I didn't want anything to interrupt uh, any kind of commentary I might have been saying. So that's why this video is in voiceover mode here, and I hope that's okay with you. Sometimes I find this goes both ways. Sometimes I find this method better for being separated from the painting and watching myself paint and describing it better ways of what I'm doing, as opposed to in the moment describing certain ways of doing things. I don't know why that is. It's just the way the creative mind works, I suppose. But yeah, and of course, there's parts where I've jumped ahead a little bit to block in other parts of the painting. Uh, I don't want to bore you with too much information, but that's okay. And cleaning up some edges, and already you can start to see the pops of light coming out and really giving an effect. And of course, I used, right now I might freehand certain lines like I'm doing here. Other times I'll have my maul stick out there and a really handy tool to use. Depends on what you're trying to achieve. Now, working on the dark of this house that I'm working on now was a little difficult. It was a lot of information packed in a small space. I changed a few things then from the real photo just because the way it was reading in the photo, if it looked odd to me there, it was definitely going to look odd in the painting. So, and there was also some desire to simplify the area uh, and not have too much clutter, say with too many windows and that sort of thing. But now you're going to have some deep, dark value comparisons that'll really start to make this painting come alive. I don't remember how long exactly the whole painting took in real time. I know it was, I'm pretty darn sure it was less than 2 hours. They usually are. But not that that matters. It's just, sometimes when you're seeing a video like this in an edited format, some people are curious about that. But I've been kind of working with structural things for a while, so I'm pretty comfortable with the drawing aspects. What was most difficult in this whole painting was in the area where I'm working now, that little covered porch. To me, that was the most difficult area because I had to decide, obviously, painting in the shadows underneath that overhang and then saving a few light tones so I didn't have to paint back over them, but other tones, like the handrails coming out from the steps, I knew I was going to cut in onto the white paint, onto the dark paint, so it's more integrated, not pasted on looking, but the major posts on that porch I left and painted around, sort of like negative painting. So thanks to ways to consider tackling subjects such as this. I could have just potentially painted in that whole dark area of the house and then put it in the window, but if you have a very light toned window, you're just kind of fighting against yourself by painting over the dark. You could gently remove some layer, like with my little wipeout tool, pick up some of the greenish paint and then buff out just a hint so you have a ghost of that green color, and then put in the window light tones so it can really seem kind of integrated in there and not as pronounced. But to me, it's not very pronounced. You can also achieve what I'm doing now if you get the proper value. It won't seem pasted on. It looks totally like it belongs and breathes in that environment. And you can see, probably if you after you watch the video, go back to the video reference photo. You can see the area I'm painting in now is actually kind of vertical little posts in the decorative treatment, the top of the overhang there. And I decided to paint that green and then come back in with the white to create the railings, the little spindles, I guess you would call them. And I just love getting to certain parts and then popping in some light tones, and it just started to really come alive. And that greenhouse, I love that house, but that green that they painted it is very difficult. I've been wanting to paint that house for so long. It's just that green is so hard to overcome sometimes. I guess you could do it and just make it a whole different color. We're the artists, so we can do what we want. Now I'm mapping out the windows for the other place. And this is a process of cutting in windows, and sometimes I'll cut back in around with the shadow color to clean them up, and then go back in again to the windows. So it's a push-pull relationship with your paint application. And this area, that little area where my brush was at before, that was a little difficult deciding how I want to handle the little bit of shadows of tree limbs onto the roof. A little difficult area to have read correctly, because that big house on the right has a little add-on set back a bit that you can see between the greenhouse and the big house. I think in the end, if I probably should have just eliminated that. Now that I'm looking at it in playback and removed from the actual experience of painting, I could see that being effective too. But live and learn. I might do that, might not. I'll have to decide. Now I'm putting in some darker tones to set off against the base tones I put on earlier, so you have some variety, some different values. And that's going to help define the limbs and bring them out a little more. Let me know what you think of the format of the videos that I do like this. Sometimes I've thought I wanted to do some full-length sort of videos, but I want people to get a lot of information out of them. But also, some people don't like the longer videos. So give me your comments. Let me know what you think. I think it depends on the videos you're watching. I've seen some art videos, they seem to go on and on, but others you don't want them to stop. So I'm not sure. I try to do my best to help you guys out there to make better paintings and give you ideas. But your input would be greatly appreciated. And I dare say this is I consider this to be one of my best paintings ever. Even though it's a little 6x8, everyone thinks larger is better. I don't know. I just loved how this painting came out. It's just it feels so alive. And I think the key to that was my really paying attention to the value structure of the painting. Values, I feel, are king, and they rule in painting. And for me, I mean, that's obviously everything we watch out there on YouTube or artists, everyone has an opinion, and this is just mine. So, there's no rules. I find it works very well for me, and I will continue to lean on that because it will always show you the truth if you're trying to work in a vein like I am of realism. Again, intermixing some little sky with that tree color to give softer edges. Then I might come back in and do some drier, firmer limbs to really give that sense of depth and realism. Well, we're coming up on the end of the video, and I hope you really enjoyed this one. And don't forget to subscribe. Check me out on Facebook at habowskistudio and my website, www.habowskistudio.com. Again, let me know what you think about the painting and how you'd like to see future videos structured like this. Take care. Bye.
Okay, I'm going to call this painting. I think it's come along well enough. I'll probably do just a little bit of work more on the trees, but I'm really liking the whole painting. And wow, did I pack a lot into this little 6x8 oil on panel. Again, there's my reference photo. You can kind of see there. And I think this turned out really nice. I'm actually contemplating about doing it on a larger scale. But hope you enjoyed the video, and hope this camera's doing okay. It's my new Canon ELPH 180. I think there's going to be some parts where I tried to zoom in and it probably didn't work well enough. I'm still learning all the little things I can do with it. So yeah, pretty happy with this piece. Okay, so the palette, of course, was titanium white, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, and burnt sienna. I think I only used a bit of the red in a chimney on that house. I'm really happy. Try to get the glare off it here, how this painting turned out. And very hard to get some detail. Of course, you can't be perfect, and I don't want it perfect. It's just a little too perfect. It becomes an architectural rendering, so you want to be careful of that. So, want to thank you for joining me for this little painting that I did here of a little urban scene, and I really like how it turned out. So don't forget to subscribe if you like the content, if you're new to the channel. And for everyone else, thank you for watching, and check me out on Facebook, habowskistudio.com, website www.habowskistudio.com. Till next time, bye.